Flanked by Texans, President Biden issues an executive order to stop most asylum seekers.
So I think that's a strong message to people that want to come to the United States, saying, hey, you got to do it the right way.
We look closer at the policy.
It's another ploy for the political year. We all know that immigration is the #1 topic for this election.
And why some border leaders are skeptical about the decision. There's a new push to create a Texas stock exchange, but one of the largest investors has been hammered by the state for its environmental investment policies.
Whether you're on that list or off that list, we want you to do business in Texas.
We asked the State Comptroller how the dispute could affect his big business deal. Lawmakers research a possible change to state law after we highlighted a veteran having trouble getting the tax exemption he earned. The new developments after our investigation.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. President Joe Biden announced an executive action to temporarily close the border to most asylum seekers. The goal is to slow the number of illegal crossings. Reaction to the order has been mixed. Monica Madden looks closer at the response from Texas border leaders and why some are skeptical about the policy.
We must first secure the border and secure it now.
President Joe Biden announcing the U.S.-Mexico border will shut down immediately Tuesday.
This action will help us gain control of our border, restore order into the process.
Under the order, when crossings exceed a threshold of 2,500 per day, only a selective group of migrants can seek asylum. They must have credible fear of returning home, and the new order makes those standards stricter.
I think this will help facilitate them coming here in an orderly way.
Some border mayors from Texas applauding the president's move at the White House Tuesday.
This does not fix our entire system, but there's a lot of work to do, right? But this is a step in the right direction.
So I think that's a strong message to people that want to come to the United States, saying, hey, you got to do it the right way, and follow the process.
But not all leaders are satisfied.
It's another ploy for the political year. We all know that immigration is the #1 topic for this election.
Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland of Terrell County skeptical that the thresholds for closure will make a difference.
That's still almost 1 million if we were to catch 2,500 a day. And he says we're going to be able to turn on and off border security. Look, you can't just turn it on and off like you do a light switch. And who's still going to process those that are coming across? It's going to be Border Patrol. And if those numbers are significant, they're still going to be tied up.
Whether or not Biden's order will stay in place is up in the air, with the ACLU already planning to file suit on behalf of migrants. Monica Madden, State of Texas.
Governor Abbott criticized the president's announcement, calling it a hollow border order. He wrote, "For 3 years, the president has lied about the existence of the border crisis, deflected blame to Congress, and now contradicts himself by issuing a feckless executive order months before Election Day." Abbott has long been critical of the Biden administration, saying it's not doing enough to secure the border. The state has spent billions on Abbott's Operation Lone Star border security initiative. Late last month, the governor visited Eagle Pass to mark the opening of a new border base for the operation. The 80-acre base with 95 buildings will house up to 1,700 soldiers with the capability of more if needed. The average number of crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border currently exceeds 2,500 per day. In fact, it's been above that level since January 2021. Under the president's order, Border Patrol will begin turning away the majority of migrants who cross illegally to seek asylum. The border will not reopen to asylum seekers until crossings fall to an average of 1,500 per day. The last time numbers fell below that level was July 2020, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. The executive order comes on the heels of a historic election in Mexico. For the first time, Mexican voters elected a woman to lead the country. Claudia Sheinbaum, a longtime populist and physicist, won in a landslide. Her election could have an influence on American politics. Her presidency comes at a time when U.S.-Mexico relations are increasingly strained on matters of immigration and drug smuggling. Mexico is also the top trading partner for America and Texas, which is why state leaders are eager to see how Sheinbaum will lead.
And I'm optimistic we're going to continue to see increased trade as we deal with very difficult and very real issues concerning migration, as well as illicit drugs that are harming both nations.
Sheinbaum will officially take office in October. Her term will run until 2030. Early in her term, she'll be tasked with handling negotiations of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. That's a major trade deal under review for renewal. Sheinbaum has said she will follow in the footsteps of her predecessor with the hugs, not bullets policy, something she praised during her campaign. It's a policy focused on avoiding confrontation with drug cartels, instead focusing on fighting poverty with social programs so there's less of an incentive for young people to join or cooperate with cartels to survive. A tight runoff election battle for a Texas congressional seat may not be over. Last week, we told you how incumbent Congressman Tony Gonzalez held off challenger Brandon Herrera by about 400 votes. Herrera conceded, but on Thursday, he told the Texas Tribune he plans to ask for a recount. District 23 stretches from San Antonio to the outskirts of El Paso. It covers a large portion of the border with Mexico. It also includes Uvalde. The Texas Republican Party censured Gonzalez last year for supporting the bipartisan gun law that passed after the shooting at Robb Elementary. Herrera is a gun rights activist known on social media as the AK guy. The Lone Star State could soon be getting its own stock exchange, but one of the largest investors is accused of breaking Texas law. We asked the State Comptroller why that's not shutting down the deal. We told you about trouble for a Texas veteran seeking a tax exemption. Now lawmakers look to step in.
Do you think this would have widespread support, bipartisan support?
If it's just a need for clarification, I'm sure that'll be something that I call a no-brainer and that people will, support this.
An update as our investigation gets attention at the state capitol. Plus, hiring and keeping nurses is a struggle for small towns in Texas.
Rural Texas, we have a lot of challenges. We have the most elderly population. We have the highest uninsured population.
See how the state is stepping in to help communities that need nurses the most.
If there is a need for a legislative fix, we will do it and we'll file a bill to do so, and I'm sure it'll get a lot of support.
State Representative Lulu Flores is one of 2 state lawmakers pledging to address a tax exemption loophole we highlighted in a recent investigation. As investigator Mike Rush explains, it involves Texas veterans who, in some cases, might not get a property tax exemption they've earned.
Nearly 30 years after he crashed his car while serving in the Army Reserves, Keith Romell still feels the effects of the injuries. He's a 100% disabled veteran, which means he doesn't have to pay property taxes. But last year, when he bought this house in East Austin, his exemption slipped through the cracks, causing him to pay thousands of dollars in taxes. Here's why.
Let's go.
When Romell bought this home in May 2023, it was a newly built condo. But property value is appraised based on the state of the property on January 1st each year. And in January 2023, a developer owned the land and was in the process of splitting it into 2 condos, one which became Romell's.
There you go, good girl.
The Travis Central Appraisal District, TCAD, says since Romell's condo and new address did not exist at the start of the year, he could not use his exemption on his new home for the remainder of that year. In our original reporting,
there just may need to be a little more tightening up on these exemptions.
We spoke with longtime Austin tax attorney Lori Michelle, who disagreed with TCAD's interpretation of the tax code.
I'm thinking he should have had it.
After KXAN brought the issue to Michelle's attention, she reached out to State Senator Paul Betancourt's office to try to change the law. Betancourt owns a tax consulting company in Houston, previously served as the Harris County tax assessor for 10 years, and in 2019,
for every taxpayer in the state, their property tax rate is coming down substantially.
Authored major property tax reform legislation. The senator tells me his office is looking into the matter and the possibility of tweaking the law.
Quite frankly, if it wasn't for y'all's investigative report, we wouldn't have heard about it. And at the end of the day, we may have to clarify this to make it crystal clear.
Well, I think that's great. I mean, that was my goal all along.
Romell says he believes KXAN's investigation helped elevate conversations he's been having for a few months with the office of his state representative, Lulu Flores.
It shouldn't be rocket science.
Flores tells me she's committed to coming up with a solution.
Maybe we need to clarify in the legislation that the exemption travels with the individual, that whatever exemption they have or are entitled to applies to that property, regardless of whether it was on the rolls or not.
Romel's exemption did kick in for 2024 and beyond, and while he will not get the money back that he spent on property taxes in 2023, he supports a change.
It'll help somebody else from being caught in this situation in the future.
Mike Rush, State of Texas.
If the lawmakers determine the law does need clarification, they'd introduce measures next year when the legislature meets again. The Texas Comptroller's office told us the approval or denial of exemptions is made at the local appraisal district level, and the districts may have different interpretations of how exemptions should be applied. We reached out to neighboring appraisal districts to see how they would handle this situation. You can see their responses in our digital story. Look for it on our website in this week's State of Texas story.
What it shows more than anything else is Texas is open for business.
Texas moves closer to getting its own stock exchange. We dig into what that could mean for the state's economy and why it's bringing new questions about a key investor. More Texans head to hospitals, but not enough nurses are staffing them. We look at one step the state is now taking to help fix the shortages. The Lone Star State could soon be getting its own stock exchange, headquartered in downtown Dallas. A group called the Texas Stock Exchange says it's taking steps to facilitate trading as early as next year. But one key player in that group has been in the conflict with the state over its environmental and social governance investments. Monica Madden spoke with the State Comptroller about the plan and what it could mean for Texas.
Investors are bullish about the opening of a Texas stock exchange.
What it shows more than anything else is Texas is open for business.
The state's top accountant not surprised a group of financiers want to cement Dallas as the financial capital of the South.
In the last decade alone, Texas has moved from the 12th largest economy in the entire world to now the 8th largest economy.
One of the leading firms is BlackRock, which has had a complicated relationship with Texas recently. In March, the state divested $8.5 billion due to its ESG policies. That's when companies weigh the environmental, social, and governance impacts of an investment rather than solely the financial benefits. Has anything changed in terms of relationship between the state and BlackRock?
That while they may still be quote unquote boycotting the oil and gas industry per the list, they are trying other efforts to show that they want to be a willing participant in the state of Texas.
Governor Greg Abbott also echoed Comptroller Hagar's thoughts on CNBC.
BlackRock has been working to try to eliminate, if you would, the tarnish on their reputation.
Adding a Texas market might give more companies more investment options.
We need to make sure that Texas companies and companies similarly situated are not going to be cut off from capital markets in New York with policy decisions made from the left.
Regardless, it'll be quite some time before the exchange is up and running, with plenty of regulatory hurdles to clear first.
This is the first of many steps to come.
Monica Madden, State of Texas.
We want to dive a little deeper into the conflict between the state and BlackRock. The state accused BlackRock of boycotting oil and natural gas companies in its investments, which violates state law. BlackRock denies the accusation. Monica asked Comptroller Hagar why the state is still working with BlackRock.
I know BlackRock is one of the investors that has been super involved in this. Recently, though, the state has had qualms with BlackRock over ESG in particular. And now, of course, they're one of the leaders in this Texas Stock Exchange. Has anything changed in terms of relationship between the state and BlackRock in terms of just willingness to work together? Not that Texas isn't, but just with the ESG stuff in particular.
Yeah, as the agency, as the controller, my office is the one that keeps the list for those financial institutions that are quote unquote boycotting the oil and gas industry per state law. And so BlackRock continues to be on that list today. Obviously, they have made efforts with this as well as several other efforts in the state of Texas to show they're committed to the state of Texas. One of the things that I make a point to people is whether you're on that list or off that list, we want you to do business in Texas. And so I think this is an effort that while they may still be quote unquote boycotting the oil and gas industry per the list, they are trying other efforts to show that they want to be a willing participant in the state of Texas. And I've continued to say, as others, is that we want them to do business. And I think when it comes to the anti-ESG or the pushback, That's really to try to bring some common sense and balance to that discussion, that while people may want to enjoy renewable energy, we are one of the largest wind producers in the United States and around the world. And in fact, people may want to have better renewable sources. We also have to have dispatchable, readily sources so you and I can have this conversation. And so the point is really trying to bring that balance and that common sense discussion.
So how would having a stock exchange in Texas would it have an impact at all on the state's revenue or anything like that? Or would it just be kind of more attractive for yet another incentive for businesses to come? And
I think more than anything else, it highlights that Texas is kind of the epicenter of the growth of the U.S. economy, much of the world economy, and recognizing that Texas is really rooted in plans to continue to grow for quite some time economically, as it would be a benefit overall to the state revenues, in part because it's another reason for business to locate, root themselves here in Texas, whether it's in Austin, Houston, the Metroplex, San Antonio, or out in the other corners of the state of Texas.
what would be, I know they announced that they're launching this, but are there any challenges in terms of, the regulatory environment, getting approval from the SEC, all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the first of many steps to come. And so this is the biggest step forward to say, yes, there's a commitment by several organizations and people that they want to set this up. And so therefore now there's obviously, you have two major exchanges here in the United States. There used to be more, but there's been consolidation like we've seen in so many other sectors. And so therefore there are challenges, but I think like so many things in Texas, we're always up for a challenge.
Hager told us it could take months, even years, before the exchange comes to fruition. If the plan moves forward, Texas would join 13 other existing stock exchanges in the U.S. market. For example, Chicago is home to 4 different stock exchanges. NYSE Chicago is the 3rd largest exchange system in the country. Many regional stock exchanges, including Chicago, Boston, and Philadelphia, have merged with the largest players, like the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ.
There are 4 million rural Texans, and sometimes those areas of the state are an afterthought.
Full hospital beds, but not enough caregivers. Some communities are struggling to find nurses. See how the state is stepping in now to help. Hiring and keeping nurses is a challenge for hospitals in large cities, but for small towns, it's a dire struggle. And those communities are often the ones that need nurses the most. Now, a new program by the Texas Department of Agriculture aims to address the rural nursing shortage. The department is taking applications for its rural nursing recruitment and retention program. Sarah Alshay reports on how the program hopes to chip away at the shortage remote communities have faced for years.
Hiring and keeping nurses. It's a constant challenge for hospitals across Texas.
There are 4 million rural Texans, and sometimes those areas of the state are an afterthought.
President and CEO of the Texas Organization of Rural and Community Hospitals, John Henderson, says a lot of it comes down to money.
Even if they offer competitive pay packages, sometimes they can't match the bonus and incentives that some of the urban systems can provide.
But the Texas Department of Agriculture opened a new pipeline for funding. The agency is seeking applicants for the Rural Nursing Recruitment and Retention Program.
It's a $15,000 stipend if you will come be a nurse in rural Texas.
An awarded facility can give that money to a nurse who is currently employed or will be employed and agrees to work full-time for a minimum of 3 years.
Rural Texas, we have a lot of challenges. We have the most elderly population. We have the highest uninsured population. And we have the 2 vocations that are most accident prone, farming and oil field work.
This program, just another in a growing list of resources for rural hospitals. Henderson already knows of some interested in applying.
This, they think, will help put them over the top with regard to those recruitment efforts.
Sarah Alshah, State of Texas.
Applications are due by June 27th. This program comes a few weeks after Governor Greg Abbott announced $17 million in grant funding awarded to rural hospitals. Those funds come from the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. A 2022 study by that same agency found that the state's graduate medical system won't produce enough physicians to meet demand in the next decade. A study shows medical residents tend to stay where they practice and train. That hurts recruiting for small-town hospitals without large educational programs. Physicians say the lack of staff impacts what services hospitals can offer, including emergency care essentials like childbirth programs. There are efforts at the Capitol to improve maternal health care in rural communities. State Representative Donna Howard helped pass a law during last year's legislative session to allow moms to qualify for Medicaid coverage up to a year after giving birth. The Austin Democrat is looking to build on efforts to improve maternal care in smaller communities.
The big thing still is trying to expand those that are covered, doing what we can to address the shortage of healthcare providers in general, looking at reimbursing for doulas, looking at advanced practice nurses and what their role can be. Mobile clinics, we did some this last session about putting more mobile clinics into place. That would help with our rural areas if we can take the healthcare to them. We have to have bipartisan legislators who are willing to recognize the impact it will have on their communities, especially in the rural area, if we do take some of these steps.
Lawmakers will be taking a closer look in the run-up to next session. Speaker Dade Phelan ordered the House Committee on Public Health to examine rural access to prenatal care and issue recommendations before next session starts. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle, and we'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.